Hulk Hogan is back in the news, and for the main event, the Hatfields versus the McCoys, the Montreal Canadiens versus the Boston Red Sox, Auburn versus Alabama. We're going to be talking about the greatest wrestling feuds of all time. Coming up next on season 2, episode 3 of Just Another Evan podcast.
Hit the music. Coming to you live from the effing Worldwide Media Studios, located in parts unknown. It's just another effing podcast.
Hey, and welcome to season 2, episode 3, Just Another effing podcast. I am one of your hosts, one of the greatest tag teams in all of professional wrestling podcast history. I am the JFB, James from Boston.
And I am, as always, the patron saint of professional wrestling. I'm that gingered up bubbly son of a bitch. I'm Canada Dry, damn it.
Yeah, Canada Dry. Woohoo! So we are on season 2. This is episode 3. Like we teased in the intro, we are talking about, of course, some of the greatest feuds in wrestling history. And mind you, likelihood is this is probably part 1 because there were so many great feuds that we didn't even get into that didn't make our initial top 10 list. Canada Dry, your thoughts on our list so far?
Okay, so it's hard to come up with a list, and everyone will bitch and complain that their feud isn't on the list, and even though with our votes, it's people are like, no, what about this? I'm like, we're never going to please everyone.
No.
So best to do is two-parter. Somewhere down the line, we'll do this again.
Yeah. I mean, some people would go out of the way to say that we're mediocre, but I like to think that we're anti-mediocre. We are pro-awesome is what we are.
This is the 3rd episode in a row we've mentioned that. So. It's Liam, the magician.
The magician is watching us live, man. So before we get to the main event, let's get to our Canada. Let's get to our news because we have some decent news that happened over this past week. So let's get into the news.
Wait. Oh, new segment. Go ahead.
Let's get into the news. God, we're like $1 billion corporation. We're almost as rich as WWE did.
Before we get into the news, I just want to congratulate our friend Natalia Markova.
Yeah,
on winning the House of Glory women's tournament.
Yeah, how many belts is that now?
I don't know, like 15. She beat a stacked tournament card to become the House of Glory's first champion.
Yeah, I saw the card. Holy cow, man! She had some stout competition.
I'm surprised she even made it. I don't want to say this, but I didn't think they would let her, kayfabe aside, get past Martinez, who was an AEW contract. So that's amazing. Yeah,
it's awesome. Congratulations to a friend of the show, Natalia Markova, the Russian Beauty, for kicking ass and getting probably her 30th or 40th belt that she currently carries right now. NWA, watch out. I have a feeling she's going to be a women's champion sooner than later. So let's get to the news. Corey Graves medically cleared to return to the ring. Booker T decided to throw in his 2 cents and said nobody ever heard of Corey Graves until he retired. Oh, company man taking a shot at a company man.
Well, it's kind of true.
Yeah. I didn't know who Corey Graves was till he retired and started doing
Corey Graves
commentary.
became famous for being the Jesse the Body Ventura character.
Yeah, yeah. So do you think he makes an appearance at Royal Rumble as a wrestler?
I think he comes in and they throw him out right away.
That Santino
I think like he's not credible as a wrestler, he's known as a commentator. Throw him out.
So in legal news, MLW is now suing WWE for undermining competition to monopolize the pro wrestling market and jeopardizing their deal with Vice TV. MLW was getting ready to sign a huge thing, and Vince personally reached out to Vice TV and told them it wouldn't be in their best interest. Of course, Vice TV said, whatever. And MLW is on Vice TV. But yeah, I mean, let's be realistic. WWE has quite the monopoly on pro wrestling right now, at least in terms of streaming, in terms of like airtime, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it's a major monopoly. Fruit Cat is in the hole.
Fruit Cat makes his appearance on the show. Just, he's got to make those cameos, and then he can go.
Yeah, he's like, "Hey guys, what's up?" And then he jets off and does cat stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. He's already gone. He just wanted to say hi.
So, what are your thoughts on MLW suing the WWE?
I think it's good for wrestling.
Yeah,
because someone has to stand up to the big bad giant, and there's more little guys, making their voice heard now. So like never before. It's such a good time for wrestling to be a wrestling fan. I never heard of any of these back in the day. Like even like maybe 7 years ago, you wouldn't have thought to even hear of these companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
unless you're like a hardcore indie guy. Yeah,
unless you're really into the indies. Like I know Dallas is big in the Ohio indies scene, and I occasionally will go to an indie show here in Nashville. But yeah, I mean it's good to have it. Speaking of the little guys, Ring of Honor champion Jonathan Gresham's Terminus promotion debuted on Fight TV. I have not seen it, but I will be perusing through it and watching it and seeing kind of what he's all about, what his philosophy is on professional wrestling. He is the Ring of Honor world champ. He is still technically under contract through March. So hopefully if Terminus really does well on Fight TV and gets some momentum, they can get involved with Ring of Honor when Ring of Honor rebrands.
That would be awesome.
That'd be awesome. Jericho for his cruise has been canceled due to Omicron, which kind of sucks because I think this was the year I was going to make the pitch to the wife to say, hey, I want to go on a cruise by myself with about 2,000 wrestling fans with no mask. What do you think?
Yeah, it would be great. Like if this Omicron thing, like maybe all of F and wrestling gets together, like some of the leaders, and we actually meet up and go on the damn cruise. That'd be awesome.
I think that would be awesome. Next year would be fantastic. Hopefully,
Dallas, if we can get Haney to come in.
I think Haney would not have a problem getting on the cruise with Jericho and just rocking wrestling cruise. Holy cow. Talk about awesome.
Yeah.
Bruce Pritchard in the news with WWE. Bruce Pritchard is now in charge 100% of all creative in NXT 2.0. I'm a longtime fan of Bruce Pritchard's. I love his podcast. He's got a very unique take and a very unique mind when it comes to pro wrestling, but he's an old school guy. And if you notice NXT 2.0, even though it's new talent being injected, it's very much an old school feel to it.
Kind of like the NWA sort of feel, right?
Yeah, it's got an NWA feel to it. And I mean, you can tell his hands are in the cookie jar and he's making the decisions creatively.
You know what's amazing about Bruce Pritchard? So he's on the outs with WWE.
Yeah.
He gets the podcast going.
Yeah.
They get him on the network.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he's running the effing network.
He's running the effing network. Yeah, it's. I mean, kudos to Bruce Pritchard.
Like, he goes from being on the outs to just being like, holding everything.
Yeah, from a guy who pulled out a gun at a staff meeting in WWE headquarters, he is now in charge of creative for NXT.
That's crazy.
Tom Phillips now officially is the voice of Impact after Matt Striker got fired a couple weeks ago. Todd Phillips is officially the voice of Impact. I love it. I've always loved Phillips. I've always thought he was a great commentator. Wasn't really given that chance at WWE.
Well, he was stuck behind Michael Cole. So,
yeah. Surprise reveal on SmackDown this past Friday. Lita has made her first appearance on SmackDown in over, now get ready, because this is going to make a lot of us feel old, 20 years. She hasn't been on SmackDown in 20 years.
Yeah, but that's kind of one of those things, because she has been on Raw.
She's been on Raw, yes.
So it's kind of like, it's not really a big deal.
Yeah, but she was very integral part of SmackDown with the SmackDown 6. She was an integral part of that whole, I'm old. Yeah, join the club, buddy. I'm old too.
Maddie is confessing to being old.
Yeah. And the last bit of news, Hulk Hogan back in the news. Let's see. Hulk Hogan back in the news said that. Oh, wait. Some breaking news. Mustafa Ali has requested his release from WWE. This is coming from Joseph Graham Jr. This is the first I've heard of it, but I mean, are you kind of not surprised? I mean, he's not being utilized. Mansoor seems to be getting the rub more than Mustafa Ali. So,
where would Mustafa Ali go?
I mean, Impact, NWA. I think Impact or AEW.
Nice thing now with NWA kind of getting some steam going now with their YouTube show.
Yeah.
Impact, MLW, GC, like so many places for wrestlers to go now. It's not just AEW or WWE.
Yeah. I mean, he literally can pretty much go anywhere. I mean, he's got a lot of talent. Worst case scenario, he goes fall back on his original job, which is a Chicago Police Department officer. So, I mean,
Matt Striker, he's not going to ever teach again. He doesn't have to. So,
yeah, exactly. He's never going to teach again. Last bit of news, Hulk Hogan back in the news said that COVID vaccine killed Betty White, Bob Saget, and Sidney Poitier.
Worst takes. Oh, man. Hulk Hogan, we're trying to get you on the show. You can't be saying stuff like this. Like just when we think we've built a bridge to get you on the show, we can't have that bad look on us.
He is while we're building the bridges, he's attaching dynamite to each of the studs. Yeah, screw Hogan and screw his comments. You're right, Maddie. Screw Hogan and screw his comments. But that is.
Talk about Maddie for a second. As soon as I nickname him the lovable Matty Hawkins, he goes off and be like, "Screw this, screw that." He's like, I thought you were lovable, Matty Hawkins.
I believe the kids call that a swerve, Canada Dry.
Like he's trying to get out of that lovable nickname I gave him.
All right, so that is the news. Let's get into our main event. We have a good one. We have a great top 10 list, but let's go ahead and get the intro.
Do we have a graphic for this?
I have an intro for this.
Okay, let's hit that intro.
Hit it.
Gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about, of course, the top 10 feuds of all time. Holy crap. Like I said, we posted the top 4 for the fans on Facebook this time to vote. And they littered the comments with, what about this feud? What about that feud? What about this and that? And trust me, we could do part 3, part 4, part 5. I mean, there are so many great feuds, but at some point we start going into feuds with wrestlers that only hardcore fans. And I know a lot of our fans are hardcore fans and they'll know these feuds, but I think a part 2 and maybe a part 3, but this is part 1 for sure. for a feud, it's got to be something, a rivalry, something that has gone on for years. When you think of the greatest rivalries, Cain and Abel, great rivalry. The Hatfields and the McCoys, great feud. Yankees and Red Sox, great feud.
You know what I think should have been on this list, but isn't?
What's that?
Should be Canada Dry.
Yeah.
And that phony Jovan Manacho.
That's a good rivalry. Is he technically out of AFW, or is he just out of the chat?
No, I seen to it that he's out of AFW forever.
Damn. We're gonna start calling you the
if
legend
you're
killer.
listening, Mr. Manacho. Yeah. Joven screwed Joven.
Joven screwed Joven. Well, let's get to our top 10 feuds, ladies and gentlemen. We always start at the bottom and work our way to the top. Liam, you missed a lot, brother. Trust me, you missed a lot. But let's go ahead and start with our bottom of the barrel, our number 10, and that, of course, is Kenny Omega versus Hangman Adam Page. Here's the thing about rivalries. Good rivalries last a few months. Great rivalries last years. And this one jumps out on the top 10 list. In an era where long-term storylines are as dead as kayfabe, AEW did the unexpected and delivered a storyline over a year long. While they barely wrestled each other, everything led to their match at AEW's biggest pay-per-view. This is how you tell short, long-term stories. You don't do it in a month. You don't do it with a couple of matches. You tell it over a year. I mean, we're talking Macho Man Hogan length, years and years. What are your thoughts?
What I love about this storyline is it's you're left is this going to happen now? And then it just they tease it and then they pull it away.
Yeah,
and they tease it and they pull it away and just come on. Like even with when they first lost the tag championships, you thought that Kenny was going to turn on him.
Yeah,
with the chair, but he didn't. And you thought Hangman was going to turn on Omega, but he didn't.
Yeah.
Just the little teases.
Yeah.
It was a tantalizing sort of feud.
Yeah. I mean, and you touched on it. They barely ever fought each other. They confront each other. And that was often, but wrestler versus wrestler in the ring.
But they had a couple tag team matches.
Yeah.
And they had 2 matches against each other.
Yeah. And I mean, it was a great tell. It built it up and it got to the crescendo. And it paid off in the acme. The acme of that rivalry was that match, and it paid off. So, and it's hard. And we wanted to get AEW on this list really bad. And really, we talked about it for a couple hours. There's some decent matches, and maybe some very short-term rivalries, but this one was the one that kind of stood out for both of us.
So Dallas, you can watch this and know that we were thinking hard about AEW because we know it's your passion and your love.
Absolutely. Dally, we always are thinking of you, brother. All right, number 9, the British Bulldogs versus the Hart Foundation. It's relatively rare to have a couple of tag teams form a long-term rivalry. Of course, teams like the Usos versus New Day is a modern rivalry. They owe a debt of gratitude towards the Bulldogs versus the Hart Foundation. Lasting about a year, the Hart Foundation chased the champs, the British Bulldogs, and on January 26, 1987, Bret and Jim Neidhart won the belts and basically concluded the rivalry in WrestleMania 3. I know I love this rivalry. I know you're a big fan. Wax poetic, if you will, my friend.
Well, they were going all over the country after they screwed the Bulldogs out of the belts, and they were going all over the country doing steel cage matches, which was kind of unheard of for tag team at the time.
Yeah,
doing steel cage matches on tour everywhere. And you just wanted the Bulldogs to get that belt back.
Yeah.
Because the Hearts were you just hated them.
Yeah.
And it's weird because you hated them so much, you ended up loving them. It's weird.
I think for me, I think what ended this rivalry was the injuries to Dynamite Kid. He blew out a knee, he had that back. Who knows how long this could have gone, provided that Dynamite Kid was in shape.
Had Dynamite Kid not had back problems, would they have got the tag belts back?
I think they would have. I think this would have gone. They would have swapped these back and forth for at least a couple of years. But again, who knows? It might have curtailed Bret Hart's solo career as well.
Well, even with Bret Hart's career, they brought him back in the tag team. Anyway, they took a bit to get him going.
Yeah, they flipped and flopped him quite a bit. So, all right, let's go to our number 8. You can't talk great rivalries from the golden era unless you talk about Piper versus Hogan. Every face of a promotion needs a foil, a villain, or in wrestling terms, a believable and over heel. The problem with Hogan was once he was the top guy, he was fed monster villain after monster villain. Guys like King Kong Bundy, Iron Sheik, and so on and so forth came, lost, and then went away. One guy stood around, became one of Hogan's best rivals. Fighting through the 80s and the 90s, Hogan never could shake his nemesis. From the 80s, where Hogan was a face and Piper was a heel, to the 90s, when Hogan was the heel and Piper was the face. They faced each other over 20 times. Here's the best fact of this rivalry. Piper never lost clean in the middle of the ring to Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, Piper was he was big on not losing clean to anyone.
Yeah.
I think even with Bret's win at WrestleMania to him, it was kind of like it wasn't even a clean win for Bret. It was just a little bit shady for Bret in that win.
Yep, absolutely. And it's funny. Piper was probably one of the very few wrestlers that excelled as a heel and also just as much excelled as a face. To me, it's hugely important to recognize that Roddy Piper was so amoeba-like. He could go whichever way he needed to go at the behest of the promoter or the bookers. I liked the feud better in the 90s than the 80s, just because it was good to see Roddy as not so much a face, but kind of a tweener, and take on Hollywood Hulk Hogan from the NWO. And those steel cage matches were freaking phenomenal.
But Haney makes a good point. This is probably the one of the most important feuds.
Yeah. I would say without this feud, you wouldn't have the classic feuds you would have in the Attitude Era and the rest of those eras that the booms that you had.
Piper goes on record saying he wished he would have learned a little bit more and put Hogan over back then.
Yeah,
because they could have had some really good main events.
Yeah,
that they didn't quite have. It wasn't quite a wrestling feud as tag team. Like they didn't really do that. The big main events against each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
As I think Piper wasn't willing to put Hogan over.
No, he wasn't. And, Piper has been known in the past to not put wrestlers over if it didn't make sense for his character to do so. And don't get me wrong, Piper put a lot of people over a lot of times as faces. But, Piper was kind of like Stone Cold. If it didn't make sense storyline-wise or for his character, he probably wasn't going to do it, All right, let's go to number 7. Trish Stratus versus Lita. Girls just want to have fun, and this rivalry can and has stood up against a lot of men's rivalries. These two women were a handful of women who took women's wrestling away from sideshow and bra and panty matches and let them showcase their actual wrestling abilities. These two amazing ladies fought for years, constantly upending the other, trading heel and face gimmicks and championships, runs paving the way for the Diva era and laying down the foundation for the pure women's wrestling. This rivalry even led to them main eventing Raw, the first time women main evented a weekly televised wrestling show. Let's wax poetic about Trish and Lita.
Wow, Trish and Lita. They are innovators
Yeah.
for women's wrestling. Without them, you don't have women's wrestling where it is today.
Mm-hmm.
Quite easily, we could say uh, that they are the Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper of the women's division.
I
Without
agree.
them, we don't have women's wrestling where it is today.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you know, those two and China made made fans start taking notice of women's wrestling, and it was more than just bra and panties matches. And
Yeah,
and trust me, women like Jacqueline and Victoria and several others, Beth Phoenix.
hi Fiona.
Hi Fiona, how you doing? For me, those women really started laying down the foundation. You wouldn't have Becky Lynch, you wouldn't have Serena Deeb, you wouldn't have Natalia Markova, you wouldn't have these women performing sometimes better than the men's matches if it wasn't for these two. And this rivalry was just absolutely amazing.
Oh my goodness, can we even say this, Alexander?
I'm not saying it.
You're gonna get us canceled.
You're gonna get us kicked off of YouTube, damn it. But yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, Trish and Lita, and it was so funny because they both came into WWE at the same time. Trish had her several months of training, but Lita had a couple of years. She was in ECW before she came to WWE. She had a couple of years of wrestling indies under her belt. So it was weird to see Lita taking the lead a lot of the times until Trish got more comfortable being a wrestler.
I think Trish is on record as saying, they put us in bra and panty matches and lingerie and stuff like that, and she hated it.
Yeah.
But she knew it was going to lead to something of her getting, she had to go through the muck to get to where she needed to get to. And,
just like Atreyu in Never-Ending Story. You got to walk through that goop of lake of mud to get to the Golden Palace.
Yeah.
That's right. I threw a Never-Ending Story reference there. So suck it.
Never-Ending Story.
Let's go to number 6. What happened to the guy that Lita came in with? He lasted for about a year and then he was gone. I don't even remember his name, but something Morales.
No.
All right, so number 6. Issa Rios, that's it. Issa Rios, that's it.
Good one, thanks. Joseph is just like he could be our sidekick, man.
Yeah, he is a plethora of knowledge. So number 6, Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat. There are some memorable rivalries in professional wrestling involving Ric Flair. His rivalries with Sting, Harley Race, and Dusty Rhodes are several rivalries that basically involved the Nature Boy, but none of them was as intriguing or as appealing as his hot fart matches against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. The trilogy of matches, all rated 5 stars by the Wrestling Observer, gave notice to the dichotomy of these two wrestlers. One was the flamboyant playboy, while the opposite was a family man. Both men fought for the coveted NWA Championship. The trilogy saw Steamboat winning the first one in Chicago, a draw at Clash of Champions, and Flair winning at Wrestle War. I can't even imagine or even think of a trilogy of matches as great or as important as the trilogy of matches with Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. Maybe one, and that's in our top 10 list as well.
Well, I'm just so glad that this match happened, because what it did was it elevated Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah.
And really let everyone know who he really was as a wrestler, and wasn't just this mid-card guy that WWF made him.
Yeah.
Ricky Steamboat, probably one of the greatest wrestlers of the 80s.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, and it's well known, I've talked about it on the pod before. For me, my injection into the veins of pro wrestling was Steamboat Savage WrestleMania 3. That made me a fan. And I watched casually before, and sometimes I would just hang out with my friend. I'd hang out at my friend Jim Dormity's house and we'd just kind of watch wrestling, and I'd just be, phased out because it, it didn't really interest me, but it was cool. But the Dragon, the Steamboat Savage was the one that got into. That's what made me a fan. And
which match of these Ric Flair Steamboat ones was your favorite?
My favorite one actually was the middle one, the one at Clash of Champions, the one that ended in a draw, because it was so controversial and a lot of people took it a little too serious. Fans were pelting the ring. They were booing. They wanted a clear-cut winner.
And they were probably more upset than Steamboat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it was a sucky draw, but it was such a great match. The
draw is just this beautiful thing. It's just like,
you get, you're so freaking close. And then, but that's probably my favorite out of the three. What's your favorite?
I would go with that one as well. That was beautiful.
You can't go wrong with a draw for 30-minute draw. It was absolutely amazing. So let's get to our number 5. Number 5, of course, the Von Erichs versus the Fabulous Freebirds. There are rivalries and then there are feuds. What the Freebird and Von Erichs was more of a feud than a rivalry. It was an epic story that made world-class championship wrestling the hottest territory by bullying Dallas and the Sportatorium on the wrestling map. In Dallas, the Von Erichs ruled with an iron fist. From Fritz to his 5 sons, David, Kevin, Kerry, Chris, and Mike, they were Dallas royalty. And then the Freebirds show up, and on Christmas night, 1982, when Kerry was facing Ric Flair for the NWA Championship, the slammed cage door heard around the world launched not only a riot in the stands, but one of the greatest rivalries of all time. After Terry Gordy slammed Kerry's head with the steel cage door and cost him the title, they spent the next 2 years battling all over Dallas and into the history books. The Von Erichs is probably one of the greatest and one of the most tragic stories of families in wrestling history.
Heartbreaking.
It is, yeah, because there's only one son that's still alive. They all passed. I mean, some were suicides, some were just mysterious illnesses. But the Freebirds the Freebird gimmick would not work today. They wore the Confederate flag on their tights.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, they at one time during a match against the Von Erichs, they painted the Confederate flags on their faces. There's no way in hell you could get away with that nowadays.
Looking at this picture, look how many fans are at the show.
Oh yeah, they would sell out stadiums. World-class championship wrestling. If you've never seen it, and you have access to Peacock in the U.S. or to the WWE Network, I believe Lacey Von Erich is in MLW. She's the granddaughter of Fritz. If you have the Peacock Network in the U.S., or if you have, perchance, the network overseas, watch World-Class Championship Wrestling.
Did the Freebirds only work in the South? Haney asked.
Yeah, they did, for the most part. Now, they did shoot up north, and they have done a couple stints for Vince. But the gimmick never took off because their style of wrestling, which was Southern wrestling, was vastly different than Northern wrestling, I love the Freebirds.
So the World-Class Championship Wrestling was still surviving while Vince was taking over everything else.
Yeah, eventually when the Freebirds left and the Von Erichs were whittled down to one or two of the brothers, and Fritz eventually was losing money hand over fist.
And the Texas Tornado showed up in WWF. So
yeah, he eventually sold to Vince. He had no choice; he had to sell. The history of World-Class Championship Wrestling is pretty interesting. If you want to dig deep into World-Class Championship Wrestling, Joven Monacho he's from Dallas. And he knows
he's an asshole.
Oh, he's an asshole, but he knows a lot about World-Class Championship Wrestling.
He'll be breaking kayfabe on the show.
Okay, yeah. Screw Joven Monacho. If you want to, just go on Google. Damn it. So what is your favorite memories of this feud, this blood feud?
Well, I don't know much about it, so I'm just relying on you for this one. I got to be honest. I don't want to be a poser. So
I'll hold your hand. You need to go on the network and you need to watch World Class Championship Wrestling. Damn
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Because you have Bruiser Brody on there, you have Duel of the Butcher. I mean, you had a cast of cards that showed up and wrestled at WCCW. But the Von Erichs versus the Fabulous Freebirds. Start with the 2 weeks prior to Christmas, and then just keep watching for the next few years.
I was looking it up on Google, and I saw they were mentioned a lot when I talked about top feuds. So
yeah,
it's perfect for our
yeah, for good reason. For good reason. So now we're going to get into the top four, and this is as voted by the fans on Facebook, on our Effin' Wrestling Facebook page. Number 4, Chris Jericho versus Shawn Michaels. Like we talked about last week, this is probably the last great feud in WWE. Between them, they warred over the title numerous times. And to be honest, a lot of the times it seemed more personal than scripted. Perhaps it was when Jericho slapped Shawn's wife in the face, but it seemed less like a feud and closer to a personal grudge between the two of them. When you throw a guy face first into the Gerotron 6000, which is a technological marvel, and I wish that I bought one when I had the chance. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't consider this Shawn Michaels' greatest feud, but I would consider it one of his top 3 feuds of all time.
I would consider Jericho's greatest feud.
I would consider it Jericho's greatest feud. Yeah, absolutely.
Just because he came out on top every time.
Yeah.
And Jericho was the hottest he was. I don't know if he ever, but he was damn hot.
Oh yeah. I mean, here's the thing. when you're dealing with Chris Jericho, what makes Jericho so dynamic is much like The Undertaker, the Jericho gimmick evolves as wrestling evolved. So whether he would needed to be a face, a heel, a tweener, whether he had to be the Lister Jericho, the Anton Sugar character that he played with the suits during the Shawn Michaels era, he changed with the times, and that's what made it so compelling.
He constantly reinvented himself.
Yeah.
I remember a line when they're feuding back in. They had a segment, and they were kind of talking back and forth.
Yeah.
And Shawn Michaels said, "You will never be Shawn Michaels." And Jericho goes, "Oh, but that's not fair." But Jericho, I can easily say that he's exceeded, if not to Shawn Michaels' level, if not higher.
Oh yeah, I consider Chris Jericho to be a wrestler. He's a technician wrestler that has changed his style over the last couple of years because he had to. He wasn't limber. He wasn't as quick, so he went to more of a power offense. Shawn Michaels, I consider to be a performer. He is probably one of the 2 best performers in wrestling, the other one being Hulk Hogan. In terms of being just a performer, working on the mic, some of the wrestling skills, the intros, the music, the looks, that all played into the performance. So for me, yeah, that, Jericho is more of a wrestler. And
I think he's got that really, I kind of disagree with you, but I think he's got that performer in him too.
Jericho does, yeah. I mean,
background.
Yeah.
Like if you had Owen and Jericho, Owen would wrestle circles around Jericho, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because I think Jericho's got that performing kind of, and that's why he's able to keep on at his age, because he's a performer at heart.
Yeah, if you can, again, go on the WWE Network and watch Smoky Mountain Wrestling when he used to tag with Lance Storm. They were called the Thrill Seekers, and you saw kind of where Jericho was getting ready to go in WCW and even ECW. Some great great matches. And you're right. I mean, he turns up that performance to a 10, sometimes to an 11. So, all right, let's get to our number 3, as voted by the fans of Effin' Wrestling. Undertaker versus Mankind. Now, we touched briefly on this rivalry when we deep dived on The Undertaker a few months back. And I don't recall a more bloody or brutal in the WWE rivalry in the WWE as this one. There were a lot of firsts in this rivalry, one being an anywhere, anytime fight. It created WWE's first true hardcore wrestler. And this was bizarre and crazy and over the top. Now, while Taker had numerous rivalries, Mankind was able to be the first wrestler to make the Taker show pain. Wax poetic about this damn rivalry, man.
Wow. Just the matches they had back and forth. Mankind falling off the cage. Damn phone. Did you hear that Superman?
It's Superman theme. Is Superman coming in? Where is he?
No, that's my ringtone. I forgot to put it on. It's my mom calling. I'll call her back.
Does she know you're in the middle of a podcast, damn it?
It's my fault. I should have put it on.
I mean, you know, everybody will remember one or two. They'll remember these two matches. They'll remember the Boiler Room Brawl.
Yeah.
And they'll remember the Hell in the Cell. And I think what you saw the first time where Undertaker looked human. And he took a brutal amount of punishment from Mankind. But really what you kind of learn, unless you were a big fan of ECW and some of the Japanese deathmatch stuff, is Mick Foley is crazy as fuck. I mean,
and I remember the Buried Alive match as well.
The Buried Alive match too. Yeah. I mean, there are 3 or 4 really big matches, but when you mention Undertaker, Mankind, automatically they go to
that
the Hell
picture you got up there is perfect for.
Yeah, exactly.
Who was.
Yeah. And I mean, he made the Undertaker look human. He didn't look superhuman. He looked human. And, you know, you realize that Mick Foley is crazy as shit. I mean, he's batshit crazy.
And I think he's still feeling the pain from that fall off the top.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a 25-foot drop onto, I don't care how much padding and how much of a work the table was that he went through.
I don't think there's much padding there, man.
Yeah, there wasn't. He took a hell of a beating. And then when he gets chokeslammed through the cage, he had a tooth in his nose. He had one of his own teeth.
Well, yeah, that fall through the cage was it wasn't supposed to happen, right?
No, it wasn't supposed to happen.
It was a failed cage.
Now, of course, the steel cage, the Hell in the Cell is reinforced, and you know it doesn't have any give like it used to, and but yeah, I mean, to me, this is probably my favorite rivalry of all time, at least in WWE. I have a couple others like in New Japan and ECW, but yeah, I mean, this was a bonkers match. This whole rivalry was just bonkers. Because it should have been silly, and it wasn't.
The other nice thing about this feud is Uncle Paul switching over to Mankind.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
Teams.
Yeah, and you know, Brother Paul, man, he wherever that urn went, Undertaker had to follow. And fell into the clutches of evil with Mankind.
I loved Mankind. Uncle Paul.
Oh, yes. All right, let's go to our number 2. Bret Hart versus Owen Hart. As we said last week, brother versus brother is as old as the Old Testament, and the rivalry between Owen and big brother Bret was timeless, lasting for just over a year. It brought a rift literally to the entire Hart family. What started at Survivor Series with Owen being eliminated by Shawn Michaels led to Owen blaming Bret for the elimination and then turning heel. After that, they had matches at WrestleMania 10 and at SummerSlam. Give us your 411.
Well, I just love this because it made Owen's career.
Yeah.
Originally, it was supposed to be, I think, Keith Hart. That was supposed to be in the feud. And Bret's like, what? You know, side note,
Yeah.
You almost wonder if Vince isn't as smart as people give him credit for.
Why you say that?
Surrounded himself with very, very smart people.
Oh yeah.
And this is a perfect example of Vince not being that smart.
Yeah.
You want Keith Hart versus Bret Hart?
Yeah.
When you have the athlete that is Owen sitting right there.
Yeah.
To me, it's Vince being surrounded with smart people and
Yeah.
taking those ideas and claiming them as his own, pretty much. But Owen and Bret, that cage match at SummerSlam
Yeah.
and the opening match of WrestleMania,
Yeah.
two of my favorites of all time.
Yeah. Mine too. Mine as well. I mean, you have the Cain versus Abel aspect of it. Owen had the one, was the one with the chip on his shoulder. He had something to prove against Big Brother. The was it the SummerSlam or the WrestleMania where they panned over to the Stu and Helen, or Stu and Martha, or no, Stu and Helen, and they looked like they were racked in pain just watching these two brothers go at it. I think it was WrestleMania, but it might have been SummerSlam.
Yeah.
But seeing that emotional toll that it had on the family, I think is what sold the rivalry more than anything else. It's a shame that we don't have Owen anymore. I know Brett's talked very highly, and has talked highly about wrestling his brother and the storyline as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a great rivalry. It really is.
The interesting thing was Brett said he wished he would have trusted Owen more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's just Brett being super critical of himself.
Yeah.
Because those matches were amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny when we talked about the top feuds and we came up with our top 10 list. I went and watched these feuds, with the exception of the Freebirds and the Von Erichs. I mean, I rewatched WrestleMania 10 and I rewatched SummerSlam, and to me, they were just as good, if not better, than some of the main events in WrestleMania 10 and SummerSlam 94.
Well, this SummerSlam match in the cage saved that whole program because the Undertaker versus Undertaker thing was horrible.
Oh, it was garbage. It was hot garbage. It was a dumpster fire.
The steel cage match, that whole SummerSlam's out.
Yeah, exactly. It saved SummerSlam, and it was, even though it was the opening match on WrestleMania 10, to me, I thought it was just as good, if not better, than the main event at WrestleMania 10, which is slipping my mind totally.
That's Bret Hart winning the title.
Yeah, it's Bret Hart winning the title. That's right. Yeah. So, all right, well, let's go to our number one. This is the one voted by the fans. This was a landslide, by the way.
Yeah.
I was not surprised, but we are talking about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, as being credited for invigorating and revamping professional wrestling. Their eventual clash was all but in the cards. They headlined 3 WrestleManias together. Both had incredible ring presence, great promo and mic skills, and a chemistry that has made this rivalry one, if not the best of all time. They created amazing wrestling memories many of us will remember all of our lifetimes. Here's the thing: when we talked about trilogy of matches and Steamboat and Ric Flair and their trilogy of matches, this one right here, bar none, is the greatest trilogy. It's better than Lord of the Rings. It's better than Star Wars. It's better than any trilogy you can think of, with the exception of the Godfather trilogy, even though Godfather 3 is garbage. This trilogy was absolutely amazing. Wax poetic, if you will.
Yeah, because you got the two biggest names.
Yeah.
In pro wrestling, besides Rock and Austin, Hogan's the next biggest name.
Yeah.
Of the time. They just went back and forth. It was amazing.
Yeah.
To think that Stone Cold kind of turned away that movie career because he wasn't into it.
Yeah.
Like The Rock was. But wow. The main events that they had, they made a lot of money together. Crazy.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, um,
Oh, Fiona is not a fan of Stone Cold Steve Austin.
how do you not be a fan of Stone Cold Steve Austin? Fiona, you make no sense to me. I'm going to get heat. It's going to be nuclear. But yeah, how do you not like Stone Cold? I mean, this rivalry, these two guys basically took the company on their back and ran with the ball, and it's funny. You can find us on Quora as well. We answer questions on Quora quite often. And somebody asked about, the Attitude Era and should Vince go back to it. And, I responded to the question with the Attitude Era was great. It had its moments, but from a pure wrestling standpoint, it wasn't wrestling. It was bashing each other over the head with chairs. And you occasionally but when you looked at pure wrestlers like Bret Hart, and they were put to the wayside, because they weren't over the top like Rock and Stone Cold were.
Wait, Effin Wrestling has a Quora account?
Yeah, we have a Quora account.
I didn't even know that.
I know.
What I liked about this was the last match they had.
Yeah.
And Stone Cold knew that he didn't have any more bumps left in his card.
Yeah.
And he wanted to make sure that he put The Rock over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And here's the thing. I mean, Stone Cold was definitely starting to decline health-wise. The neck obviously was a major issue with his pile driver from Owen. So, yeah, I mean, Stone Cold was not exactly at 100%. A majority of the time, he was barely at 80%. Yeah, and don't forget every match ending in DQ.
It's true.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. But, who knows what could have been if Stone Cold was healthier. For me, imagine Reigns versus Rocket Mania with Stone Cold as ref in Texas. I mean, Stone Cold lives in Texas. Who knows? I mean, with the booking WWE is doing right now.
Oh, they just put the Reigns over. It'd be predictable. So that's about that.
But yeah, I mean, who knows? We could have gotten 5, 6, 7 WrestleManias out of these guys. And they could have literally fought forever. And, obviously Hollywood was calling The Rock and he's got that charisma. Stone Cold was going through a really dark period in his life at that time. But I think they turned out pretty good afterwards.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
One of the greatest feuds of all time.
Absolutely. That's why it was voted number 1 by the fans.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is our top 10 feuds and rivalries.
So I would say out of all those,
yeah,
wrestling wise,
yeah,
I would say Owen and Bret, the best wrestling feud.
I would say Owen and Bret, as well. I mean, the Fabulous Freebirds versus Von Erichs was just, they pummeled the hell out of each other. Yeah. It was, I mean, the Von Erichs were technical wrestlers, and that's how Fritz trained them. But out of all of those, I would say maybe Kenny Omega versus Hangman Page.
Yeah, that one, and maybe Flair and Steamboat.
Yeah, Flair and Steamboat. If you get a chance, it's on the network.
As a technical wrestling.
But Owen versus Bret, because you had 2 mat technicians, both trained by Stu, and Stu trained his. Alex Haney, can I ask a non-wrestling question? You know what? What the hell? Go ahead. Ask away, Mr. Haney. What is your non-wrestling question? Brady or Montana? I have a very biased opinion on this, and so I'm going to go ahead and say
Montana for the win.
Tom Brady and Joe Montana played in very different eras, but Brady, 6th-round draft pick, was not in the greatest of shape when he first came to Patriots camp, and was kind of said, hey, guess what? You're going to be starting because our starting quarterback is injured. And he's improved over time So I picked Brady. John Montana was the number 1 draft pick when he came out of college. He had some really shitty years. He had some shitty years with San Francisco, but I mean, he won a lot of Super Bowls for San Francisco. So I'm going to go with Brady. I think Brady was kind of the go with Montana. Yeah, just go with Montana. Just
Hannah
go ahead
Montana,
and oppose
the
me.
greatest quarterback in NFL history.
And then Gresham, Joseph Graham asked about
Gresham. You got
Gresham.
Joseph Graham.
I got Gresham on the head. Joseph Graham asked about the Bullet Club Civil Wars of Feud. I mean, part 2 is coming up soon. I mean, we're going to have it at least within the next couple months. So
I mean, part 2 will disappoint a whole new group of people.
Part 2, we're going to deep dive, ladies and gentlemen. I'll say this. The one that won't be on there is Misawa, the rivalry he had with his tag team partner in New Japan Pro Wrestling and All Japan was freaking brilliant. But I won't include that because 99% of the people who don't watch Japanese wrestling will have no idea what I'm talking about. So.
Yeah, and that's the toughest thing. It's like, because we want to include what people know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, we got hardcore fans. I mean, we got fans that are hardcore wrestling fans. And so they know, if we're talking about Tommy Dreamer versus Raven and ECW as a rivalry, they'll know who those guys are and they'll understand that rivalry. So, but yeah, part
Raven,
2.
He showed up on NWA the other day.
Who did?
Raven.
Oh shit, that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah, Raven's part of NWA.
And you want to talk about great wrestling minds? Yeah. I've had the chance to meet Raven. I met him at a meet and greet convention, and was there super early, so I got to actually sit down and talk to him for a while. That man has a mind for the business.
Oh yeah,
that is that's just scary good. He knows the psychological aspects of writing, producing, and booking matches.
When he showed up on NWA and he said, "What about me? What about Raven?" I was like, yeah.
All right, guys. So that is a wrap on season 2, episode 3, the greatest wrestling feuds of all time. As always, you can find us on our amazing and well-maintained website, fnwrestling.com. You can go ahead and find all our social media links. It's right on the homepage. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram. We're going to put the link for Quora if you want to go and ask questions on Quora. And above all, you can go ahead and find links to our private personal Twitter addresses as well. If you want to buy a shirt, I have, of course, the OG shirt. Canada Dry's got his shirt.
And we got the Owen Hart tribute up there.
And the Owen Hart tribute shirt, the Gimmick Boy shirt. We got a lot of shirts. We're
designed by this guy right here.
Yeah, Alex Haney. Great show. Thank you, Alex.
Even though he laid us with peppers and he hit us low blows the whole show.
Yeah, he always ends up with a big hug at the end.
Yeah, we always appreciate you, Haney, and thank you so much. Haney designed this shirt and the Canada Dad one, and that was all his idea, his design. So thank you so much for everything you do, Alex Haney, with all your designs and whatnot.
Yeah, you rock, Mr. Haney, for sure. And of course, if you want to get a t-shirt, you can always go to prowrestlingtees.com/effing wrestling. And so, we talked about Hulk Hogan and his COVID comments. And so I know you weren't aware of that prior to your last messaging with Hulk Hogan, but where are we with Hulk Hogan and getting him on the show?
Actually, I was aware of that.
Oh.
And Hulk Hogan was writing me. I kind of didn't want to respond to him, so I ignored him. So he's on ignore right now because we don't want any of that heat on the show. So Hulk Hogan, clean up your act. Stop yapping your gums. And with that, effing wrestling 307 and 1. Hulk Hogan 0. Canada Dry out.
This has been an effing worldwide media production. You can find us on Twitter at All Effing Wrestling or at FN Podcast. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/FN Wrestling. After that, why don't you go ahead and throw a T on your back? You can find us on the Pro Wrestling Tees store at prowrestlingtees.com/FN Wrestling. You can find all this at our new website, FNWrestling.com.